Yes, Mayor, I'm ready.
Great, thank you. Welcome to everybody who is joining us for the Zoomside chat with Gabe, our new Los Altos City Manager. As you may have seen, this is the first of two different events the city is hosting to introduce Gabe to the Los Altos community. So for those of you who were able to join us this evening, thank you so much for doing so. My name is Nisa Flagger, for those of you who don't know, and I am the mayor of Los Altos. And I see we have Councilmember Weinberg as an attendee. I want to welcome him as well. And I don't know if the other council members will be joining. Vice Mayor Enander, Councilmember Lee Ang, Councilmember Meadows. As the community knows, it was a unanimous decision in selecting Gabe as our city manager. And the vice mayor and I headed up the team to recruit and select Gabe. So we were very happy with the selection, and we're very excited to introduce him to the Los Altos community. So Gabe, welcome to Los Altos.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So before we dive into questions, I do want to cover some housekeeping rules for the Zoomside chat. One of the reasons we're doing this is because, unfortunately, we're not able to do this at City Hall or at the youth center, where residents could really walk up to Gabe and ask him whatever questions they have. And so this is really an opportunity for you to ask Gabe those burning questions that I know you all have. So please, if you have questions, submit them in the Q&A feature, which should be at the bottom of your screen. If you're not able to access that Q&A feature, please feel free to send Trevor Marsden, who is city staff, an email. Trevor's email address is T as in Trevor, MARSDEN @losaltosca, all one word, .gov. Again, if you would like to submit a question and you're not able to access the Q&A feature, please send an email to Trevor and he'll get it over to me for me to ask the question. So thank you so much. Another housekeeping rule, I know sometimes for these events there's a chat feature. We do not have that chat feature for this webinar. And I will kick us off with questions, and then depending on how many questions we see coming in, I will take breaks so that we can incorporate your questions. And I will say that when we were preparing for this webinar, Gabe said to myself and Trevor that, you know, he will stay on as long as he needs to answer your questions. And of course, Trevor and I looked at each other. Just kidding. No, and that was very thoughtful of Gabe. And so, you know, if you have your questions, no matter what time it is, please submit them. We're scheduled to go for an hour, but we'll go over if we need to. Okay, Gabe. The first thing I would like to do, and I think you have some special guests in the room with you, so I would really love for you to introduce your family to the Los Altos community.
Ellie, come say hi. She's going to be very shy. This is my daughter, Ellie. She is 4.5, and my wife, Amanda. Ellie is very, very excited to be here. She's already discovered several parks and the Redwood Preserve, and you're riding your bikes on the street, and she's promised she was going to say hi, but this might be as close as we're going to get. So
Gabe, the fact that she's here, she's looking at the camera, is special enough. So thank you so much for joining us, Ellie. Nice to meet you. We look forward to meeting you and your mom in person.
You want to wave bye? There we go.
All right, so let's see.
All right, thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Ellie.
All right.
Okay.
She was real excited at home, so that's
no. I understand. No, she showed up, and and I'm sure when you get home tonight, Gabe, she'll have lots of questions.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Okay, so I'm going to start us off with the most commonly asked question since we announced you as our new city manager. And that is, how do you pronounce your last name?
That's the most commonly asked question. So the second E is just silent. It's just England. It's like the country. But we don't actually know how it got thrown in there. I call it, from the Midwest, you'll understand this. We call it the Canadian vowel because they put vowels in everything. So there's a random E in there, but it's just England. But I respond to just about anything. So
Okay,
that's how it goes.
great. And I've been calling you Gabe. You do go by Gabe.
Yep.
Okay, great. So everybody wants to know, you're a new city manager. How would you describe your management style?
So we try and do things a little bit differently. We talk about a distributed power model where we really want the directors and managers to be making the decisions. We want them empowered to kind of take charge of the projects, to run their departments. I always tell them that their first job is being a member of the executive team and implementing the council's vision. And then their second job is whatever it says on their business card. So we really try and have a flat hierarchy. We seek a lot of collaboration, a lot of different input, a lot of different points of views before we make a decision. And we feel like that improves the outcome quite a bit. So I'm obviously brand new, so we've just started meeting. But that's the philosophy that we're going to try and bring here.
Great, thanks, Gabe. And I should have mentioned, I have a mix of questions, personal, management, city questions, and I'll just mix them all in. We already have questions coming in from the residents. I also have some would you rather questions later on, because my family will be going on a road trip very soon. And that's one of the games my children want to play, would you rather. So it gave me the idea of I should throw in some would you rather questions in this Zoomside chat as well. So be ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like those
so
questions.
What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun when you're not, being a city manager?
Yeah. So, well, that's like 98% of the time. But the 2% of the time when I'm not, I like to go hiking. My daughter and I spent last Saturday morning hiking in the redwoods in the state park, and then we spent the afternoon at the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. She calls it Carnival. So I spend a lot of time with her when I can, when I'm away from here. Pre-COVID, I like to go to the movies. I don't know what that looks like in a post-COVID world. I think like everyone else, right, our orientation changed a little bit where the things that we did before that have really become outdoor based. So it's a lot more family walks, a lot more time outside, a lot more time at the beach, a lot more time camping, and road trips, tons of road trips, which is a lot of fun. So I'm glad you're doing that too.
Great, thanks, Gabe. And I will ask the first audience question, and it's from Frank Cecily, and let me apologize if I mispronounce your name. Frank wants to know, what do you think are your top 3 priorities in the next 100 days?
So I think the first thing that you're tasked with doing when you come into an organization is just kind of learning, meeting people, and really trying to understand where the government's at, what's the direction that it's going, why the decisions were made the way they were. And it really takes time, not only because there's a lot going on here, a lot going on in this city specifically, but also a lot of these projects are really long term, so they started 4 or 5 years ago, and you're trying to understand not only why did it start where it started, but why did it end where it ended. So it's a lot of getting to know things, and that's not a super exciting answer, and I apologize for that, but really before you can start making decisions and the changes that need to be made, you kind of have to understand as deeply as you can the lay of the organization. The second thing I'm looking at, and I'm certain there's going to be questions on this later too, is budget. We've got some room to make up. Well, we'll say it nicely on how we want to get our financial house in order. Where we're at today is not where we want to be. And if we don't make some improvements, we're not going to be able to do the things that the residents deserve and the things that the residents desire. And then the third one is really looking at the organizational structure. One of the things that we talk about with the directors is we say, if you were coming in and designing your department today, what would it look like? And very rarely, almost never is the answer, well, it'd look exactly like what I have today. But in government, sometimes we tend to not take a critical look at where we're investing our resources, if we're investing them as efficiently as we could, or more importantly, if we're investing them where we should. So we have some departments here that are having a really hard time meeting the expectations of the community because they're really stretched thin. And then we have other departments who maybe are filling a position because it was there 8 years ago, and when it became vacant, they filled it. When it became vacant, they filled it. So we do a thing called zero-based budgeting, which is to identify where you should put the resources in your organization, and that's the third priority.
No, thanks, Gabe. And you're already, what, 7 days in? So you have 93 days left, so the clock's ticking.
That's right.
So speaking of the budget, Norma Schroeder had submitted a question in advance, and I'll read it to you, and it's a good follow-up to what you just said. Your prior town, Sierra Madre, had budget and financial concerns when you began your tenure there. You are credited by the papers as straightening them out in about 1 year. Based on what you've gleaned so far about Los Altos, what is similar and or different about our financial situation? Many citizens are anxious about the debt we acquired to finish the new community center, as well as other obligations.
Yeah, so there are some similarities, not a ton. Unfortunately, for the person asking the question, some of the similarities are not positive, right? We have effectively, I've been able to identify, we have weak financial policies in place, and they're not always adhered to the way they should be to ensure that you're making appropriate budget decisions. We have another similarity we have is when the state passed Public Employee Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA, they put in part of this where we're going to effectively catch up on our pension obligations. It's called a unfunded accrued liability. We've had a number of years to plan for it. We haven't planned for that effectively, and what that means is our annual payments out of the general fund have been increasing pretty dramatically, and they're going to double over the next 5 years if we don't take action. So we need to address that. Some of the differences that we have here are we look at how we fund our capital, how we do kind of a forward thinking or 5-year plan, and we've got some really solid pieces in place. So when we talk about the budget in its entirety, we know that the current budget that's adopted has a deficit. We know that there's some structural deficits into what we have built out, but we know a lot of those structural deficits are due to either capital purchases or capital investments. And those are things that you can plan for a little bit differently. So when we look at how we want to get our financial house in order, there's a lot on the kind of the technical side that you want to make sure is in place. There's a little bit on the planning side that we can do, but most of it is going to come based on, are we using our money in the most efficient way possible? And the example of that, again, is either how we fund our CalPERS, how we look at how we do some of our allocations and our transfers. So the budget situation overall is manageable. I think we can improve it pretty quickly. And we're what, Mayor, like 4 weeks into the new fiscal year. So we're just all starting to learn at the same time, you know, where we're at coming out of COVID in this budget. We made a lot of calculations, a lot of predictions on the revenue side that were very conservative. So we're going to see soon, you know, what type of situation are we in? Are we recovering quicker or slower than we thought? So the similarities are not great, and the differences are good for Los Altos in this case, though. But we do have work to do, and that's going to be a big focus. And one of the things I'd mentioned before, we're going to implement zero-based budgeting here. And so people know what that is basically all the directors get in the room. We go line by line through every expenditure in the budget, and you have to defend that expenditure before we include it. And that doesn't necessarily mean you reduce the budget, but it may mean that you're taking a line item in an overfunded area and moving it to another area. So we have to work on alignment as well.
Great, Gabe. Thank you. Next question from Janine Valadez. Through what mechanisms or means will you make yourself available to community members to hear the input or commentary or issues? And I had a similar question if we had time later. How do you plan? What are the different ways you plan to engage directly with our Los Altos residents? And I know we're still in COVID. COVID is still very much with us. So that may impose some limitations. But what are some mechanisms or methods you plan to deploy or engage our community?
So, I mean, some of them are pretty basic, right? City Hall right now is closed. We're going to announce a reopening for next month. But even though we're closed, the door you saw my wife walk out of walks outside. I leave that open. I've talked to a bunch of people already trying to file business licenses or trying to do other things with the city. And I tell them, hey, I'm new. I don't know if I can help you, but we'll get the right answer. So I try and make myself available by, physically and literally having an open door policy. I just got my business cards. It's got my cell phone number on it. So people are going to be able to call or text me at any point they have it. I spend a lot of time in the community at events or walking around and trying to introduce myself so people know who I am. I always take calls. I always take meetings. I've lined up a number of meetings with anyone who's reached out from just, there's one who's just a resident who just wants to tell me what she thinks about the community. And then there's other groups that have interests in projects or concerns, and we'll meet with all of them. So to the best of my ability, I'm always available either at City Hall or through a call or text on my phone or an email, or you're just going to see me walking around downtown 2 days. Someone already recognized me at lunch today, and they're asking me questions about the city. I'm like, this is great. It's fantastic. I have no idea how you know who I am already.
Your picture is everywhere, Gabe.
That's right. It must be. So in general, I'm joking, but in general, I try to be really easy to connect with and not have a lot of barriers between someone coming in that wants to meet with me or see me. And I try and be out in the community as much as possible. Great.
So Gabe, two things. One, there's now going to be a line outside that door every day. And two, do you want to share your city cell phone number now with residents?
So the direct line that rings to, it actually rings to my office, my cell phone, my computer, and you can text on it is 650-947-2605.
Great, thank you. Let me go to one of my questions, and there are questions coming in from residents, so that's great. What do you enjoy most about being a city manager, and what's the most challenging?
So the enjoyment question's easy. Local level of government, you can see the impacts of your work, both good, sometimes the mistakes, just immediately. If you've done something, you can see the impact that it has on the residents or the businesses, and I love that. There's no other job where you can have such a wide range of impact, and it's people that are your neighbors, right, and your friends and people that you live with. So you get to do that in your community, and it's very unique. There's not a lot I don't like about being a city manager. Sometimes I always say, like, I love constructive criticism and I love feedback, and I'd say that, and then people would start saying, for real, do you? And then I had to put the caveat. I was like, I love fair constructive criticism. It's like sometimes in government, you'll get blamed for things that you don't control. Like, why did you wreck my life? Why did you do this? And I'm like, sorry, sir, it was actually the state that wrecked your life. And I didn't like that either. So the hardest thing is when you have to try and facilitate or provide an answer where something you can't really provide a solution to because it's not something that you control, but they think because you're the residents think because you're in government that, you're the one that caused that to happen. So sometimes that's hard, but almost everything about being a city manager is great. I love it. It's a really fun career.
Great, thanks, Gabe. And I just noticed that several people called in after we kicked off the Zoomside chat, so I want them to know that if they have questions, please submit them through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or send an email to Trevor, T as in Trevor, MARSDEN @losaltosca.gov. So that's an email to Trevor, and he'll make sure that we get your question. And thanks to everybody who's joining us. I'm so happy to see all of you. So next question, Gabe, as you know, the City of Los Altos is starting its housing element update process, as we're required to do by law. And you did something similar as the city manager. You were part of the same process in your former city. And we may not mention that city's name anymore. We will just say your former city. What would you say are the top 3 things that need to be in place to ensure a successful housing element update process?
So it's just when we say that the top 3 things, this is a complex law. And it's very difficult to comply with. And sometimes cities are able to comply, but the actual building or construction is not feasible, right? So depending on how you look at it and what your focus is, I think that top 3 could change. I think for me, the most important thing is alignment, right? This is going to be a thing that has a great interest in the community. It's also a thing that council and the community have to get right. It's going to have a big impact on what Los Altos looks like in the near term and down the road. And as we know, RENA is cyclical, so it's not like it's a one and done. You build on the work you've done previously, or you get penalized sometimes for the work you've done previously as you go through RENA. So we're going to talk about alignment, right? Making sure that what the council vision is in what the community wants are feasible. The second thing that you're going to look at is how do you do outreach, right? Because if you're only listening or only hearing from the people that are naturally interested and they're going to come and talk to you, you're going to get a really good plan that probably doesn't represent the entire population of the community. So we have to do continual outreach, and we have to do it in, I think we've become comfortable in COVID and saying, hey, well, we had a webinar, right? So we've done the outreach. And for something like RENA, you have to be willing to meet people where they're at, whether that's at a farmer's market where I'll be at on Thursday, or on a webinar, or in-person meetings, or one-on-one or phone. The outreach component is going to be critical in how you filter that feedback in. And then the third part is how timely can we be in doing this? So one of the things that when you get your RENA allocation, and you see the numbers you have to comply with, and then you're like, okay, well, that deadline's so far in the future. We're able to plan and we'll get it done. And the steps and the bureaucratic technical steps that you're required to take and the approvals you have to get from HCD and the time and the CEQA, if you're not sticking to this, you can have completed alignment, you can get your outreach done, and then HCD is going to be like, man, your plan was due 6 months ago. What are you doing? So there's this brings together all the elements of government where we have to have the council lead, we have to facilitate discussions in the community, and then on the bureaucratic technical side, we really have to be good at what we do, because getting any of those 3 out of alignment is going to throw the whole thing off. RENA is going to be a big deal, and the community is going to like it because it gives them the chance to talk about what they want Los Altos to look like in the future, and it's going to have a lot of engagement, to put it mildly. But we'll get a plan out there that the community likes and that's in the vision of council.
Great, Gabe. And RENA, RHNAs, or Regional Housing Needs Allocation Number, that I know many in our community are familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of them appreciated hearing how key that community engagement is to the process to be really successful. So thanks for that, Gabe.
Did
So
I
we
only use the acronym, Mayor? I never even said, I just went straight to the acronym. That's rude of me. I apologize.
to doing this. It's okay. So next question that was sent in from Harry Guy. First, welcome to Los Altos, Gabe. The residents, council, and staff are thrilled to have you here. My question is, based on what you've learned about our city so far, and this is similar to a question that was asked earlier, but what top 3 to 5, let's say 3 current issues do you want to solve in the next couple of fiscal years? And this is the part of the question that I don't think has been asked yet. What would success look like? How would you know that you've accomplished the goal?
Yeah, so defining success overall as an organization, right? Especially when you have as many unique lines of service as we do, it's hard to find one size fits all. What we focus on here when we talk about success is, have we implemented to the best of our ability the visions of council, right? So a lot of the times what we talk about, council sets the policy and we administer that. And we'll go through from beginning to end. And if you're looking at simply, checking the boxes and getting it done, you can say, well, I got that off my to-do list. What we look at is, have they been implemented in the way that council desired them? So if the program, it's not just, is it available? Is it thriving? Is it working? Is it maintained? Is it funded? Is it sustainable? So we do a lot of the programmatic stuff. We'll talk about success. From an employee standpoint, Los Altos is very lean. And we have a lot of employees that put in a lot of long hours. I'm reflecting that on week 1 as I was here on Friday and Sunday. And what we talk about from an employee standpoint, success is, are we able to balance to some reasonable extent the quality of our life with our work? And if you're going to be here 75 hours a week, right, you're going to burn out. It's just not going to work. So from an organizational, from a staff standpoint, we want to talk about, are we operating an organization that's successful, that's able to be high achieving, but not at the expense of the individuals who do that. And I'll be honest, we're at a little scary place right now. A lot of employees are putting in tremendous hours and tremendous work to move the objectives of the city forward, but it's likely not sustainable. When we talk about going over a couple of fiscal years, we've talked about the budget a little bit. We have to get the budget figured out. We're about to open a brand new community center, and we're doing it at a time when we're coming out of COVID, so we don't have a great baseline for what operations look like. And we also have to do this in a time where we have to balance the services between the different parts of our city. So when we talk about the next couple of fiscal years and we'll look back and we'll say, have we been successful? We'll have a budget with a surplus that's eliminated the future structural deficits, that appropriately plans for our capital investments and maintenance. We'll have a community center that is running well, it's appropriately staffed, but the services the residents get don't only happen there. Right, they happen in all our parks, they happen in Grant Park, they happen everywhere else. So those are kind of the things that we're looking at now. But in order to get to those second 2, we have to get the staffing side figured out, and we have to make sure that whatever we do is sustainable and we can keep it moving into the future.
Great. And I appreciate the fact that you threw in the name of a park there. You knew the name of Grant Park.
That's one I can pronounce.
Maybe one of the surprise questions I have later.
All right.
And from Janine Valadez, what were the accomplishments as city manager of which you were most proud in your previous city?
So, since we're calling it the previous city, we had a lot of accomplishments there. I used to joke with that council. I said, when you put your flyer out, that it was almost a cry for help. It was they listed, these are all the issues that we have, and there were a lot that we're really proud of. One, When I started, we were a volunteer fire agency. So you imagine being in the middle of LA County, and you're the only volunteer fire agency, and we don't have enough volunteers to actually keep our engine in service, so we can't actually respond to the calls that we get. By the time I had departed to come up here, we were a career department, and we were also a member, it's what's called Verdugo there, but it's a type of borderless response. And it shows that not only are you a career department, but you're accepted by your peers, because now we can respond across borders to be the first fire engine in there. We took a budget that had a lot of issues, hadn't been balanced appropriately in a number of years. And we took it to have a surplus, to have multi-year surpluses. I think this year the surplus was something like 12 to 15% of expenditures. We did RENA, which we're really proud of, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, as the mayor mentioned. But the thing that I think is going to be the longest lasting down there is when we started, we had a staff that was a little hesitant to make decisions. We spent a lot of time and money at that point on, let's get a study, let's do a plan, let's put a bunch of plans together, it'll be a master plan, but we're not going to make a decision. And we're worried to make a recommendation because, well, what if the council doesn't like it? Or what if it doesn't work out? And we went from when we started to having just super long meetings where we debate things for hours and then never put them to bed, to my last meeting there, we adopted our budget in 15 minutes and a 12-page PowerPoint, because we had gotten really good at making recommendations. We had built a lot of trust with the community. We built a lot of trust with council. And I think that culture that we developed, it lasted through COVID, and it was strengthening when I left. And I think that's going to be the longest lasting impact in that city, is we were able to take a staff situation that was not ideal, it was frozen, and turn it into a real strength of that community.
And I'm sure you know that our council meetings end early and we get through items in less than 15 minutes. So you won't have that issue here.
Yeah.
Yep. Next question from Laura Texler. The city is in the process of updating our CAP, which is our climate action plan. What is your experience with climate action plans, and what do you think our goal as a city should be? For example, carbon neutral by a certain date. And there's a lot happening from the federal level all the way down. So what do you think our goal should be as a city as we develop this plan?
Yeah, so the climate action plans I have little experience with. I think what I focus on when I have things like that are the things that I control. So when we say what should the goal be, I think this is a discussion that we have with council, right? What do we want to be neutral? Do we want to be net negative? What is it we want to have? When we talk about climate action plans, I want to control the things I can. So I want to make sure we're retrofitting city buildings to have xeriscape or less grass or drought tolerant, put aerators in the faucets, put low flush toilets. So when we talk about climate action plan, my goal is to facilitate a plan that meets the desires of council and the community. And that's how you'll see me operate that. From an administrative plan, which I control, we've already started having conversations about what do we want our parks to look like, understanding the state has passed new laws that are going to restrict water use, understanding that we're already getting a percentage reduction from our water suppliers. How do we manage that? So it's not a great and direct answer to the question, but something like a goal for the city or where you want the city to be at, it's a more appropriate question for the city council.
Right. Thanks, Gabe. So Bill Huff also submitted a question to Trevor, and it is, there are a number of publishers who insist on dumping unwanted junk magazines on driveways in the city. If a resident is away, the magazine can remain on the driveway for an extended period of time, signaling to one and all that nobody's home. As city manager, would you consider sending a cease and desist letter to these publishers to stop this annoying practice?
So that's interesting. I didn't know that was something that happened here. I can see how that would be annoying. I don't have a lot of background information on that one specifically, so I think at this point I'd probably have to commit to working with the city attorney, seeing if anything's being violated and where we can go. And I apologize. That's it's just a very specific issue that I don't have a lot of background on.
No, thanks for that, Gabe. Yes, that does happen in our city.
Good to know.
Next question from Joe Bedonato. It's clear to many residents that staff is small and stretched thin. And I think you mentioned earlier, Gabe, I think you used the word lean. Sometimes this results in poor service to the community and occasionally in criticism from members of council. This must be incredibly demoralizing to staff to know how hard they're working and then be publicly criticized. Other than the obvious answer of increasing the budget staff, how do we fix this dysfunctional situation to boost morale and improve resident satisfaction with city services? And before you answer, I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of council to thank each and every member of our staff. We know how hard they work. Trevor and Sonia are online right now. It's 6:40 p.m. and they're here helping us with this webinar. I don't think they ever say no to our requests. So I do want to just take this opportunity, recognize the question being asked by your resident, and I'll have you answer it, but also just to really thank staff for their commitment and hard work.
So I will say from a global level, I feel appreciated as staff. So I'll say thank you to that, Mayor. I don't think increasing the number of staff or the budgets, it's not realistic, right? We know where our budget's at today. We know where our service level is at, and looking at that and into the future and the needs that we have, we're going to be able to pretty much take that off the table. Now we can reallocate some resources to different places. We can make sure we're providing a different or higher level of service in community services, for example, as we open the community center. But increasing the staff and FTEs is it's unlikely to happen. I don't see the budget for it. I do think one of the things I talk a lot with staff about and a lot with council about it is alignment. So we can look at this as staff goes forward and they're getting criticized in public. That's not a reflection of the hard work they put in. And it's also not a reflection of how a council member feels about that hard work. I think in general, we need to work better at making a wide range of recommendations that fall in line with the policy objectives of council. And I think in general, council needs to recognize they're a policy setting body, and their job is to ensure the items being brought forward satisfy their policy initiatives. So the best analogy I can use is city council's job is 2021, 2022, 2023. My job is January, February, March. Staff's job is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I think sometimes what gets interpreted as criticism is misalignment in where we're at. And sometimes staff invites that because what we've put forward isn't exactly what council was looking for. And then I think sometimes council's asking questions about the work, and it can appear as if it's not acknowledging the hard work that's put in, but I don't take it that way. So I don't see it as criticism of the person or the work. I do sometimes see it as criticism of the recommendation, but that's not inappropriate as long as at the end of the meeting, right, we understand that we're all trying to make the community better. It's a professional meeting, and personally, we're all still friends, right? I always tell council, you reject a recommendation, I'm not going to lose any sleep at night. That's why you're elected, right? So I do think we can work on the tone and the tenor in some situations, but I don't get a feeling in City Hall or talking with council that there's, there's criticism or there's mistrust or there's anything like that. So I think everyone has to work on the alignment, but I'm not overly worried about, I'm not overly worried about the culture or where we're at.
Great. Thanks, Gabe. So let me go to a couple of my questions, then I'll go back to audience questions. If you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
So every city manager will answer it this way. It's the power of being invisible. I made the mistake of trying to go to lunch the other day, last week, and instead of using the secret exit here, I was like, I'll walk through City Hall. And it took me like an hour and a half from the time I left my office to get out. I was almost out the door, and Angel, who's in the city manager's office, like, have a nice lunch, Gabe. And all these heads pop out. And I was like, oh, I'm never getting out of here. So I got to be invisible because then I can go get lunch, or I could just use the secret exit. I don't know why I didn't.
It's no longer secret, Gabe. This is being recorded,
Right.
and I know it's being live streamed, so people are watching it on Facebook as well. Okay, favorite type of food?
Oh, so food that's like the thing I love. We go out to eat all the time. There's no type of food I don't like. I will say that. But I've been eating so much pho lately. That is where I'm at. So I think I was at my fourth pho meal since I've started here. And this was a recommendation of staff, and it was just downtown. I've been out to the one, I'm forgetting the name, Loyola Corners.
Yeah, yes.
So I've been to a few already, but that's it right now. That's my favorite food right now. In like 3 months, it's going to be ice cream or something. I don't know, but that's what it is right now.
Okay, favorite movie or book?
Oh, man.
You mentioned loving movies earlier. I think that's so, and we won't judge you.
No. So it's fine. I'm laughing at the book question. There's a list of movies right now. It's a Wonderful Life. I really enjoy that. I was trying to think. One of the questions, like, how often do you read? So I read all the time, but it's mostly like periodicals or trade journals or newspapers. So much about the pandemic and COVID-19. I was trying to think of the last book I read, and I think it was pre-pandemic, but. Movies are definitely more up my alley. But right now, it's A Wonderful Life. That's the best movie on the planet. You can't tell me.
That's a classic. Okay, and the first would you rather question of many if we have time. Would you rather a tropical island vacation or a European vacation?
Oh, well, that's got to be European vacation, I think. I'm not on my vacations. I like to do things. And just like laying on a tropical island, I think it would be fun for a couple hours, and then I'd be like, what are we doing now? So got to be European vacation.
Good to know, Gabe. Okay, so back to audience questions. I see another question from Janine Valadez. How do you balance zero-based budgeting, which is often criticized for reflecting a focus on near-term needs and priorities, with the city's strategic long-term goals?
Yeah, so I think zero-based budgeting, I don't think has a focus on near term. I think when you look at how it's implemented, that could certainly be the case. I think a lot of times people think, well, you're going in line by line and it's to cut items, and the goal is to come out 12% or 8% different. But that's not how we use it. We use zero-based to make sure the expenditure is appropriate, and we use it to reinvest in other areas of the organization where we may find the expenditures are not. So the zero-based doesn't mean reduction. It means you come in and say what you need. And if last year you spent $500 on pencils or widgets or something else that governments use, that doesn't mean you get 500 this year. And what we might have found is it was an incredible year for needing widgets, and we need $550. So the zero base actually allows you to increase your zero base, right, from last year's 500 to 550. So it's not focused on short term. It's focused on resource alignment and putting investments in the organization where they need to go. And it actually plays in very well with long-term and strategic priorities, because I'll tell you, the way we do the budget right now, we're not going to meet those priorities because we don't have the resources to meet them. So we need to make sure if we do want to meet our long-term goals, if we do want to maintain, for example, the buildings that we have, if we do want to continue to do everything that's in the plan, we can't just think like we're going to go on tomorrow like we are today, because we do know enough about the budget now to know that we have to make changes to meet our objectives.
Thanks, Gabe. Another resident question, and I'm sure you've been downtown, you've seen the public art. We had the bear stroll where there were also bears all over Los Altos. Do you have any experience or ideas about public art?
So I have experience with public art, and the experience is mostly that it's very thankless, because 51% of the people are going to love it and 49% be like, why did you put that there? I think the bears are great. I think public art is important. Joking aside, I'm glad that we're able to fund it here. I hope we're able to expand the program and place things. I understand there's going to be two pretty significant pieces at the community center. One piece will be moved. There's going to be some cool murals. So I'm really glad that council had the foresight to fund this. And I think art for the sake of art is important, but it makes places better. It's going to make Los Altos even more livable, if you can imagine that. It's going to make downtown and other areas more interesting. So I'm a big fan. I just will not be selecting or weighing in on the pieces. That's all.
Would you rather, so speaking of the beer stroll that we just had, would you rather a glass of wine or beer?
Can I answer whiskey? Is that not?
That's a third option.
That's the answer.
Okay. Can you name, and you've already thrown out one already, but can you name 3 of our business districts?
Oh man, well, there's downtown, there's Loyola Corners. There's the one that my daughter,
like, even if you don't know the name.
Yeah, no, there's the one that my daughter refers to as the one that has the funny looking bakery. That's the northern end of town. She likes the awning on it. It's I can't think of the name of it though.
Is that El Camino in San Antonio?
Yeah, where they've got, it's like a cool bakery. It's next to the really good Mexican place, but their bakery has stripes on it. I think it's a bakery. So she looks forward, she always knows where we're at. So when we go up there.
Bakery.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, name 3 city parks.
There's Shope. Wait, do I have to pronounce them correctly?
Well, go ahead.
there's Shope, and there's Lincoln, and there's Grant Park.
Yes, and it's Shout.
I don't know. I've not seen.
We'll forgive you. You've only been here for a week. Next week, if you say, what did you say? It's Shout.
That's what I said.
What's the date for the community center grand opening?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've technically not been invited to that yet, though I think it's October 3rd.
October 2nd.
Oh, it's so close. I'm waiting for the invite. So just so you know, I've not gotten that yet. So
this is just our opportunity to obviously to get the word out again. The grand opening for the community center is on October 2nd. Okay, we have another question.
I feel like, Mayor, someone legitimately could have slipped me the answer to that one. I could have just looked it up. So at least you know we're being honest here.
It was on the slideshow at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
The next question, I know we're close to time, from Frank Ciselli. Another question. I realize it's a county issue, but the eucalyptus tree branches hanging over parts of Foothill. There are, eucalyptus tree branches hanging over parts of Foothill Expressway. It is only a matter of time before branches start falling off onto cars and bikers. Is there anything that the city manager can do to push the county to address this risk?
Yeah, we can certainly talk with the county about this. Not knowing specifically what it looks like, overhanging trees over roads are a legitimate concern, and we will talk with the county about this tomorrow.
Okay. Has anything surprised you about Los Altos since you've moved here for a week now? You moved here a week ago. What has surprised you about Los Altos?
Tough questions from the residents have been a little surprising. This is supposed to be a nice meet and greet, and you're quizzing me on the geography of town when I've been here a week. I mean, come on. I don't know. I don't know if surprised is the right word. When we took a vacation mid-pandemic to be outdoors, and we somehow found our way into Los Altos and into this area. And at the time, we were like, this is fantastic. We love it if we could ever get back. But I had always wondered, like, is that just the vacation high? Like, is the community really like that? And so we're coming back up here, and it's being reinforced. So it's kind of not quite a surprise, but it's nice to know that the perception of the place that you vacation to is the same place that you now live at.
No, that's great. Another question from a resident. How can the city, and we don't know if you have experience doing this either in, Colorado, where you were city manager in Trinidad, or in Sierra Madre, but really engaging our younger residents and keeping them engaged. Because I will share with you that what we've experienced in Los Altos is our youth are issue driven. And so, for example, I remember when we were discussing REACH codes, for example, we had so many high school students show up to our meetings, sending in letters, making phone calls, and then they disappeared. And so the question is, we know, there are things that will engage them, but then they disappear. So do you have experience with programs or ideas about how to sustain the engagement?
Yeah, so one of the things that we try and do when we're engaging young people is give them responsibility, right? And treat their concerns and their ideas not like they're coming from a young person, but that they're coming from an interested person. So in my previous stops, we allowed some of the teenagers to design a dog park and name it. We allowed them to work on a skate park design. We moved to put them on boards and commissions as full members. So I don't know if sustaining an individual or a group of individuals is always possible, because kids are growing and changing a lot, and they are going to be issues driven. But what we found is we can keep them engaged in the community, maybe not necessarily in government, if we say, not only is your idea important, but we're going to give you a chance to solve it or to work on it, and we're going to let you know how the decisions are made. So giving young people responsibility, holding them accountable to their ideas, tends to work to keep them engaged in community life. But Mayor, as you know, there's only so much interesting things happening in government. So sometimes you'll get a young person on one issue, and then they're going to be off on another thing. But that's what's been successful for me in my career. One of my favorites was the Girl Scout troop wanted to redo a small dog park in my former community. And they had all these ideas, and their dad was there, and he's like, but we don't know how we're going to do it. And I said, well, listen, you come up with the ideas, and as long as you're diligent, you stay on it, the city will partner with you and fund this. And it became their project, and they had to work on it, and we were able to keep them all the way through the issue. And I think we'll keep them in the community as well, because they see that their ideas are valued.
No, I agree. So just a couple more questions. This question is from Alan Epstein. How did you support the library and friends of the library at your last city? And I will tell you, the Los Altos community loves our libraries. And we have a very engaged and active Friends of the Library group that does so much for our community. So how did you support the library and the Friends of the Library group in your last city?
So we worked really hard on the library, the Friends of the Library. We actually had multiple library groups. It wasn't just centered on one. So in general, how I support Friends of the Library is the same way we support other non-government institutions that are volunteers, or they really make things run, or they really help us, as Friends of the Library does, is we try and make it really easy to work with the government. We try and take every obstacle out of the way that we can to help them get to where they want to be. So the Friends of the Library here are working on a really exciting licensing agreement, a really cool new building. I'm going to meet with them, I think, next week. And the commitment I make to them is we're going to be super easy to work with, right? We're not going to be an obstacle to your success, and that's how we'll support you. And it's the same way we support other groups. I got to meet with the local ham group in town, and these guys are awesome. They do so much. And my pledge to them is we're just going to make your life easier. And if we're going to rely on that group or the Friends of the Library to do things for us that are very important, then the best thing we can do is not make it challenging to come in and work with us. So that's how I'll support all groups, including the Friends.
Thanks, Gabe. Okay, last would you rather, because of the time I'll stop with this as the last question, and then, I'll turn it to you to see if you want to say any last words for the community. Would you rather a sweet treat or a savory treat?
Oh, sweet.
Okay.
Oh, I'm like triple chocolate ice cream with chocolate toppings. We'll be good to go.
Okay. All right, Gabe, I'm going to turn it over to you before we close out the program, but thank you, and thanks to everybody who called in. So, Gabe?
Yeah, first of all, Mayor, thanks. This was a lot of fun. And thanks to everyone who tuned in. We feel really fortunate to be here. We're really excited to be here. Everyone should know, I'm sure they already do, but anyone who's listening and doesn't, the staff here is amazing, super dedicated, very hardworking, love this community. And what we want to do is just come and build on what's already here. And so my pledge is not only to make it easy to work with, but I'm going to be available. I'm going to respond to your texts, your calls, your emails. I'll meet with you. I want to hear, genuinely want to hear what it is you want for your government to do, how you want us to operate, what ideas you have. And that's the kind of government that we're going to try and operate. So I appreciate everyone for coming on tonight. If you have questions that you want to ask later that maybe wasn't for a webinar, just call me or just stop by the door.
Again, Gabe, what's that phone number?
I haven't memorized yet. It's 650-947-2605.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, if you would like to meet Gabe in person, he will be at our farmers market on Thursday, starting at 4 p.m. He'll be in the city booth, so please come out and meet him in person. Thanks again, Gabe. Welcome to Los Altos.